South Africans spend an average of 63% of their income servicing debt, and that just got higher with the Reserve Bank increasing the repo rate by 25 basis points. Now, the already burdened consumer has to pay on car, home and personal loan repayments, but it may even lead to some people falling deeper and deeper into the debt trap. So let's get some advice on how to manage debt from Naledi Totana from National Debt Advisors, joining me this morning to give you some sound advice here this morning. Naledi, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. Paint us that picture. How much of debt are South Africans currently in?
Well, currently at the moment, it's currently being measured as most households in the country, at least in terms of their income, their debt takes up 75% of their income. If we look at reports that were released in 2022 between April and June, Experian, which is one of the most credible credit bureaus, noted that at least 19.28 billion consumers, which were first offenders, defaulted on their credit agreements. So based on the hiking inflation and the hiking repo rate, consumers are currently experiencing the runt.
With that being said, I mean, what kind of debt here are South Africans mostly servicing? What's so popular on that list of data in terms of what accounts for the debt South Africans have incurred?
So in terms of revolving credit agreements, so it was noted that primarily in the period of December, dropping down from June, in the period of December, these consumers were taking out credit agreements, right, to basically, for whatsoever reasons they had in the period of December, to basically service other existing credit agreements. And what was noted is that the consumers that took out these loans, making reference to revolving credit and credit cards, they couldn't basically make up payment within the month of January. It's noted currently in the month of January that the very same consumers who took out those credit agreements from the month of April, June and December were consistently defaulting. So it might be a matter of inflation, it might be a matter of financial literacy, but based on what the records are currently showing us at the moment is that these consumers are in debt distress.
Yeah. Naledi, what would your advice then be? Because just last week, the South African Reserve Bank announced those interest rates hikes, so definitely a clear indication that our pockets need to be tightened even further. Today, we're expecting to have a conversation with Professor Vonke Dumisa. Again, we're seeing the petrol price going up, cost of just the food basket equally increasing. So that means more pressure on South Africans in terms of servicing their debt and not having, of course, the credit name under disrepute or given a negative status. How would you advise us to manage our debt at this time?
Well, there are numerous factors that you need to take into account. Firstly, ideally, what you'd like to do is create a financial note or financial plan for yourself as an individual, right? So our CEO, Chanel Collins, speaks about a smart financial plan, which basically reference you have to be specific in terms of your financial goals for this year. You need to ensure that you know what you want to accomplish within the year of 2023. Create a list from 1 to 5, noting basically your goals. You need to ensure that your goals are measurable, because oftentimes consumers tend to create a list of goals that are not measurable, which ideally then leads to disappointment. You need to ensure that your goals predominantly are also achievable, right? And you need to ensure that your goals are realistic. Right? Because that eventually will also lead to disappointment. You need to ensure that your goals are time-based, right? So that you can develop a process whereby you evaluate these goals in a period of 3 to 6 months, right? So if your goals are time-based, it will ensure monitoring and it will hold you accountable. Now, the matter of inflation is not a national matter, but it's a global matter. If we look at the UK is experiencing a lot of debt distress at the moment, and China is slightly reaching a rebound. Right? So the current effects at the moment, one can make a reference to the declining prices of commodities, which leads to less robust exports. right? One could also make a reference to load shedding. Now, load shedding doesn't have an effect merely just on growth. It also affects households and businesses in terms of production. Most households at the moment are currently left with no solution but to find an alternative energy source in terms of assisting them. Businesses are also having to focus on this fee because they also have to find an alternative energy source. So if you do create a plan, right, if you do create a concise plan that you stick to, which I've made note as to the SMART plan, you will float above this year. It's about creating a plan and sticking to it and then reviewing it.
Yes.
6 to 3 months after.
Now, just briefly then, before I let you go, I've got a few seconds left with you. When should I then realize if it's time for debt rescue? If it's time for intervention where I need a professional debt advisor to come into play and intervene because perhaps I'm not managing with my debt and I'm not managing with the sound advice that you've given?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that question because people tend to be in denial in terms of that. So the red flags that you'd like to look out for is basically diverting from your budget. Right, not being disciplined, not focusing on your budget. Another one is living beyond your means. Like I made reference to most consumers in the month of December, basically taking out credit agreements for reasons that they found relevant to themselves. That basically speaks to not catering to your essentials and non-essentials. And then another one is basically living on credit cards. And we found this to be prevalent in most cases in terms of consumers who do experience debt distress.
All right, we'll leave it there. Naledi, I appreciate the advice. Thank you so much for making time to talk to us. What a way to start our day this morning, understanding how we can manage our debts, but also not being in denial, as Naledi had attributed to, saying some people are in denial and it would be wiser, rather, to get sound debt advice and get yourself the intervention that you need. All right, thanks to Naledi Totana from National Debt Advisors for talking to us on how we can, of course, make the most with the little money that we have, but also servicing our debt.